G'day again, everyone. Thought I'd pop in and have another chat with you about some other things that were released over the last couple of days. I did have a big discussion with you yesterday about the Sony A7 III, and I'm still trying to get over the excitement of that, to be totally honest. It's just incredible what Sony put out yesterday. But there's some other interesting news as well I want to go over with you as well, is about the new Sigma releases. But I'm going to give you a few minutes to get a few people on board. So let's just go to the chat and we'll see who starts to actually come in. So we've got Tony's here, I'm DeBrown's here, Oreo's here, Rez is here, Three Trees Photography. Where is the damn flipping screen? Three Trees is saying, where's the flipping screen? It might come out with the next A6700. I think what's probably going to happen is that's going to be the camera that may potentially have the flip out screen, is the new A6700 or 7000, whatever they produce. I don't think it's going to come out in the full frame bodies for quite a while. That's just my feeling. So now, if you are popping in, we've got about another couple of minutes before we'll start the actual talk. So, you know, just ask questions away or just say hello if you like. Three Trees said, I'm running on, it's my UPS just came on. It's interesting. Three Trees said the A7 III looks hot. I know, it looks incredible. I can't believe the camera for that money that they're offering. And I'm going to have a talk about that against the D850, the Nikon camera. I might do that tomorrow actually, because the specs are really interesting when you start to compare those two cameras. Mike said the A7 III is pre-ordered. I don't blame you, Mike. You know what? Just a little bit earlier, I had my camera up. I had one of these sale sites here and I was so tempted to put the GH5 up for sale to get it. I just can't justify it at this stage with the amount of cameras that I've got. I'm quite happy with what I've got, but I can tell you one thing, I will be getting that camera sometime this year, definitely. I will be getting that camera. I'm not quite sure when, but I'm certainly going to get it. But I was sort of tapping and I'm thinking, oh, the only thing that is stopping me selling my GH5 to get that camera is the 4K 60p is still an issue for me. And also, the overheating can still be an issue here in Australia because it's very, very hot. And when I'm running weddings, and unlike most wedding videographers, I haven't got the luxury of standing next to my camera when it's shooting for the video side, because remember, I do fusion and therefore I have to sort of leave that camera running in the background doing the whole ceremony. Now, if that ceremony takes an hour, I've got to leave it running. And having that ability to, say, put the GH5 on a tripod and just let it go and know that it's definitely not going to overheat or stop with the time limits is a big thing for me. So that's probably the thing that's just stopping me from selling it at the moment and immediately getting the A7 III. But I can tell you one thing, I will definitely be getting the A7 III sometime this year. I'm just not sure when yet, but I will definitely be getting it. So who else have we got? David's here, Stuart's here as well, Jean is here from Canada. Everyone forget about the flip out screen on full frame cameras. I agree, DeBrown. We're not going to get them on full frame, so get over it. I do think that's possibly going to be the next APS-C camera, though. I think that's where they may do it. They may not, but we'll just wait and see. Todd's here. Casper's here. Corona time. No, Corona's for my live shows, guys. I'm still just drinking Coke. On my live show Saturday morning, it'll have to be Saturday morning Australian time, which is Friday US time, because I'm going out with Kerry on Friday, so we're not available. So I'll be doing it Saturday sometime, so that'll be Corona time for me. What else have we got? Scott said selling the RX100V and the A6500 for the A7 III. Good move. I mean, honestly, it's just going to be amazing. What are you using for an intervalometer? Have you used the Alpine Lab Spark? No, I'm not using an intervalometer. I'm still using my A7 II, which has it all built in. I'm just using the Play Memories app, so I'm using that at this stage. Also, I can use my GH5, which has the intervalometer built into it, JP. SPTTL, wow, another live, yeah, baby. I watched your video yesterday, mate. It was really good talking about the A6, the new A7 III. Pop on chat and have a look at his site, guys. Sam is here as well. Mike said, get rid of that GH5 and get a real camera. Oh, Mike, don't do it to me. I've just told you the reasons why. I was so tempted. I just can't at this stage. But, you know, I'm thinking about it. Three Trees said, I'm a Canon and Sony guy. Sony must have felt sorry for Canon and left off the $5 flipping screen hinge. Richard said, hello, David. Gene said, selling the A6 III with the extra batteries to get the A7 III later this year. And that's one thing too, which I think is going to really happen. I think a lot of people are going to sell probably their A6 III or A6 500s and move to the A7 III. They're going to get a massive market from that camera by doing that, I think. So it's going to be a really interesting thing what's going to happen with APS-C. Casper said, sell the GH5 and wait for the A7S III 60 frames per second. That's the next thing that'll be coming out, probably at NAB. I've got feelings that's going to blow everything else out of the water for video completely, but we have to wait and see, Casper. Hi, Roy, how are you? Meredith's here. I'm new. Well, welcome, Meredith. Good to see you on board live. Three Trees said the flip-out screen is the only thing saving the 6D II. It's still a better vlogger camera. Yeah, and it is, and that's one reason why I also like the GH5 too, for that aspect of having that flip-out screen if I'm doing a vlog type thing as well. That's why I think it potentially will come out in something like the A6 700. But we'll have to wait and see. Sam said, just sold my old A7 this morning. Sam, I sold my two A7s the other day, a few weeks ago, so I was glad to get rid of them earlier, so I had no issues getting rid of them. It's still a good camera. There's nothing wrong with the A7 II. It's just obviously the new release is way better. Scott said, hi David, I've got a lot of APS-C glass for my A6 300 in the Super 35 mode on the A7 III. Is it as good as the A6? Yes, it is. I use that glass all the time on my A7R2 and my A9, and it's just as good. So don't worry about that. You can use it on APS-C mode, 35mm mode on your A7 III. Oreo said, flipping screen for vlogging is no issue. Get a simple cheap monitor and you're done. You're right, Oreo. The only thing is it's an extra thing you got to lug around, and that's the thing that I hate. I do wish Sony, to be honest, had a flip-out screen on their APS-C cameras. I'm not worried for their full frame. It really doesn't bother me that they haven't got that. Although they may surprise us with the A7S and bring out a flip-out screen with that, because that's a video-specific camera. So they could do that on that camera, but we'll have to wait and see. JP, does anyone know if it has an AA filter? I don't, well, it may. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see yet. Let's see if anyone else knows. IMD Brand said, David, they will have a flip-out screen on APS-C size bodies to keep that market going. And you might be right there, Tony. Mike said, good move. I did the same and pre-ordered the A7 III. Until it is available, I'll make do with my A6 500. And that's about it at this stage. Anyone else know if the 6D2 is the only full flame flip screen? All right, guys, so I'm going to go through this stuff with you, and then we'll come back and have a chat again. So I will come back to your questions. So if you do have any questions, put the @DavidOsler there as well. But I'm just going to go to the introduction screen so people can skip if they want to. G'day everyone, we just had a little bit of a pre-show. I'm not going to get rid of it, I'll leave it there, but if you obviously have skipped to this point, we'll start the discussion on the Sony lenses. We have got a stack of people in the chat, and I'm going to go back to the chat a little bit later on, so if you have got any questions, put down the @DavidOsler through here. I'm going to post a link, because please join this page. Let me just scroll here. Please join this page, because if you haven't, I have a Facebook page specifically for you guys, basically, and it expands on it. I'm just going to show it. Let me bring it up for a second, because I want to show you guys this actual page before we get started. It's the Photography and Videography School, this one. So if you haven't joined it, please join this page, because it's the Photography and Videography School, but basically it's a site that is expanding on what I give to you guys on YouTube, and it's a way that we can all get in touch and things, and I'm giving critiques and giving people advice about what's going on. But basically I'm not limiting anything on this site if you follow the rules. in the way that you can promote anything. You can promote your Instagram, you can promote videos. We have weekly photo competitions and video competitions. It's a way that you can really share your work. So unlike a lot of other sites that are out there, I'm not stopping people from using this to promote their business or share YouTube videos, things like that. So please join us on this site, because I really want this to grow, because it's a great area where we can have people like yourselves, and then I can obviously communicate with you more through this Facebook site, because I'm always on Facebook. So please join us on that site. And like I said, it's a photography videography school. So please, yeah, join us there. But that's not what I wanted to talk to you about today. If you want to ask some questions, please put the @DavidOsler as you see here. That will make sure that I don't miss it. So if you put that down, I'll go back through some questions at the end of this, because I'd love to have a chat with you if you have any questions, and I'll answer anything that you basically want. But well, I'll have a chat too about the A7 III, obviously, and things like that. But today I'm going to talk about this new release, which is the Sigma release of lenses that have just come out. So basically, I'm just going to move this over so we can see it correctly. So Sigma have announced complete FE mount, E-mount lenses have just been announced, and really, look, this is an incredible thing that has just happened for the Sigma lineup. Or the Sony lineup. And I've heard a lot of people, which is really interesting, I've heard a lot of people online whinging about the weight of these things, because what they're saying is that on the bottom down here, let me just bring something up, because I'll just like to show you what I'm talking about. Where is it now? It's hiding. I think I've deleted it. Oh, yeah, I have. Oh no, there we go. All right, so basically, in this area here is well, what they've had to do basically is put the MC11 adapter, and it's built into the actual lens itself. So basically that's what they've had to do to get this mount to actually work. Look, eventually they may change that and start to design the lenses in a different way. But I don't see really an issue with doing that, because those lenses, I've tested them, and those lenses work really well with that adapter, especially if you're using the latest cameras like the A9, the A7 III, and obviously the A7 III is going to be the same. These adapters, and with incorporating inside the lens, work fantastic. And I'm sure there'll be firmware released and things like that that are just going to blow the previous systems away with what they've got. But the thing is, I've heard a lot of people online talking about the weight and stuff. These lenses are going to be ridiculously big in size, things like that. Now remember, to some people, the size does not matter that much, because I did change it, and I'll talk about my experience, for instance, in this scenario, that I did change when I went from Nikon. I was using a D4S with all of the big Nikon lenses, and I actually had a Sigma, and I'll talk about that shortly, but I was using all of the big lenses and stuff like that, and I changed to get mirrorless mostly for the technology that was involved, plus the EVF. That was the main reason I changed, and because of the weight factor. So for me, weight does matter. Now, I'm a lot older than a lot of the young wedding photographers that are coming out there that probably won't mind carrying around these bigger lenses. I used to do it without any issues at all. It's just as I got older, it did start to affect me when I was shooting weddings and things like that. But having these lenses available is a really big thing. Now, the reason why I say that is because I used to have, when I had my Nikon D4S, I bought the Sigma 85 1.4, and that lens, it was the art lens. That lens was stunning. It was really unbelievably optically clean, sharp. I loved using it, and I dreaded selling that when I actually sold my gear. So Sigma lenses, I believe, are definitely a step up from a lot of the other lenses. They're sort of probably, they may be probably on par with the G-Master. In some cases, some people probably say they're a little bit better. It's hard to say, but you are getting a really good optically made lens when you're buying Sigma. And it probably is more of a lens that I probably would buy. For me, running a full-time business, I probably would buy Sigma over something like Samyang or the other Tamron, those other companies. I'm not saying those lenses are bad, guys, so don't think that I'm saying those lenses are bad at all. It's just that I think I would probably purchase these before I purchased those lenses. Now, that's just my business decision. You can talk about the chat about how you feel about that. A lot of you are probably going to say just get Samyang or something like that. They're fine, and they are. But I'm just talking about from my business perspective. I've always been extremely happy with this Sigma quality whenever I've used them. But having said that, I haven't got any other lenses apart from Sony lenses, and I've discussed that before because I need the Sony Pro support, and I've found they're fantastic to fix. But there's a couple of lenses in there that interest me, one particularly, and I'll talk about that as we go through them. But let me know in the chat what you think about that, because I'd just be curious to see what you guys think. So having said that, I'm just going to go here and I'll talk about the ones that are announced. So we've got the Sigma 14mm 1.8, the Sigma 20 1.4, the Sigma 24 1.4, the Sigma 35 1.4, the Sigma 50 1.4, the Sigma 70 2.8, and the interesting thing with that's the macro. So we've got another macro now, which is a really interesting lens to get, because that's probably quite a nice focal length, and I believe from the reviews that's really quite a good macro lens. The Sigma 85 1.4, the Sigma 105, and the Sigma 85. So the interesting thing is, when you start to read this, that the more things that are happening now, not only have we just had an amazing, incredible release yesterday with the A7 III, but we're starting now to see that the lens is no longer an issue where people say they've got no lenses. Now, I'm sure that the Sigma are going to fairly shortly also start to add their zoom lenses as well into this. So again, then we're going to have more zoom lenses. So when people are starting to whinge about weight and things like that, I think this is a good thing. Clearly, you don't have to buy these lenses. If you think the lens is too big for you, well, then you wouldn't buy it. You'd buy the Sony lenses or Samyang or something like that. If you're not worried about the weight, and a lot of people aren't, because a lot of people like to put the battery grips on these cameras, and they like the bigger feel of a heavy camera, and I can tell you that's true. A lot of people do. So if that's the case, Samyang is really going to have quite a good market in this sort of area. But again, the beauty is here that we've got another company that's really now fully supporting the Sony line. So it's just a good thing that we've actually now got. So let me know what you think about that anyway, because I'd be curious to know. But we'll go back to the lenses, and I'll just sort of discuss with you. I'll show you what the lenses look like. So this is the Sigma Art 14 1.8. And again, these lenses are beautifully made. Like all Sigma lenses are really beautifully made. I think they're probably as well made as the Zeiss lenses are from the ones that I've actually touched. This is the Sigma 20 1.4 lens. This one here is the Sigma Art 24 1.4, the Sigma Art 35 1.4, the Sigma Art 50 1.4, Sigma Art 85 1.4. The 135 1.4 is this lens here. So that gives you a look at the lenses that are actually there. Now, what interests me out of these sort of lineup, well, I can tell you for starters, I'd love to try the 135 1.8. I'd love to try that lens. The 105, there's also a 105 there, but that's so close to the 85 for me that it's probably not relevant for what I'd like to shoot, being a portrait photographer. But definitely the 135 1.8 art lens would definitely interest me, and because I love that focal length for portraits. I love the 85 focal length, but I think if you're dealing with the perfect focal length for portraits, it's the 135mm. That's the perfect length if you're dealing with that beautiful compression on the face. So I think that's a fantastic lens. Now, I'm sure Sony's probably going to come out with a G Master lens of this as well. Size, it's rumoured for a while, it just hasn't materialised yet, but I'm sure that this is probably going to come out in the coming months. So that's one lens that I definitely would like to try, and the other one is perhaps the macro also interests me. The others not so much at this stage, but I'm just happy that Sony are releasing these lenses, and like I said, they're usually very well made. Now, pricing wise, I think that it's probably going to be it will be dearer than the Samsung variants of it. So, you know, if you wanted to get, say, the 35 1.4 or the 85 1.4, the 35 1.4 will definitely be more expensive than the Samyang, but it is definitely, I would say, going to be cheaper than the Sony G Masters. So it just depends on where you want to fit in your budget about where you'd like to actually go with these and how much you want to spend. So if you can't afford the G Masters, I think the Sigma lenses are probably going to be the next best step down. But that's just a personal thing. But let's go to the discussion, because I'm just curious to see what you guys think about this. So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to scroll back and we'll have a look. Excuse me while I have a drink. We were initially just talking about the A7 III release, and you can throw some of those questions in now too, guys, if you want to. I'm just going to answer anything here, so we'll just go over the questions that are there. Prince said, "Hi David, I'm selling my 5D4. If I can sell all my glass, then I will come over to the Sony Alpha camp." And I don't blame you. Look, after Canon have just announced the M5 or whatever it's called, the mirrorless camera that they've just released, again, they've crippled that camera. Canon just keeps shooting themselves in the foot. Having that with only 4K, you can record 15 minutes, I think, and you can't even use the full focusing on that camera in 4K. It goes to contrast detect is ridiculous. So Canon is shooting themselves in the foot again. They really need to release a camera that's not holding anything back like Sony have. So I don't blame you for thinking about jumping ship. Casper said, "Nice purple shirt." Thanks, mate. What else have we got? So they thought it was really bad purple fringing on my shirt. You guys with my shirt. The other day I had a salmon one, which is Mike's talking about. Let's have a look. Tony, I'm DeBran said, "I don't know about the 6D2 and it doesn't have 4K." And that's right. It hasn't got 4K. And that's the problem with the Canon camera, that camera. It only shoots 1080p. What else have we got? If all the feedback comes back good on the A7 III after release, I'm getting one. And like I said, I'm definitely going to be getting one 3 trees. Sometime during the year, I'll definitely get one of those or two of them. I'll make up my decision later on. I'm still waiting to see what the A7S has as well. Gene Lewis said, "How well does the IAF work on Sigma lenses?" Well, if you're using the A9, it works very well. So if you're using the latest cameras, it works very well. I'm not sure about using it with the other lower-ended cameras, but it works very well on that lens. I tested the MC11 adapter in the camera store for quite a while, and I was quite happy with it on the A9, but that was using the A9. So if the A7 III has just as equal focusing as the A9, it's going to be good. 3 Tree said that's awesome about the Sigma FE lineup, and it is. It's fantastic. You can't complain about that at all. JP, which G Masters are you using? I'm not using any, JP. I've stuck with, and it's a decision from me where I was talking about weight. The main lenses I use are all Sony, but I'm using the f4 variations of them. So I have the 70-200 f4. I have the 24-70 f4. I have the Zeiss Batis, that's the only non-Sony lens I had, and I bought that before Sony released the 85, otherwise I would have got the Sony 85 1.8. I'm deliberately using the lighter lenses because it shoots my style more, and to be honest, I just always shoot light, and I'm mostly shooting primes, which for me is the Sony 35 1.4 is what I'm using nearly all the time, and the 85 Batis are the two lenses I use, and I sometimes will use my 55 1.8 and also the 35 f2.8. I'm using those lenses. So I'm not buying G Masters. It's not a thing of the money involved for me. It's more that I don't want to lug around that weight, and I don't need the G Master lenses for my shooting style, but that's what I'm using at this stage. Casper said, I still use my Carl Zeiss 24-70 and the 16-35 CS A mount. Oh, that's the other lens I've got too, is the 16-35 f4 on my A9, and it works great, but heavy, yeah. That's the decision you have to make, is whether you're willing to carry around heavier glass or not. If you are willing to carry around heavier glass, it's fine. If you're using something like the A9, the A7 III, even the A7 II, and with the battery grip on it and these heavier lenses, it does balance very well. If you're not using that battery grip with something like the Samyang lenses that are quite heavy, even G-Master lenses are heavy. It can be a bit more unbalanced, but if you're using the battery grip, it sort of all balances itself out fine. It just depends on whether you like to have that heavy feel or not. A lot of photographers do like to have that heavy feel about it. You know, if you look in the Nikon areas, they're still bagging the A7 III this morning, saying that they don't want to be holding this tiny camera. So again, for some people, that's an important thing. So if you do feel like that, holding a Sigma lens, which is quite heavy, is not an issue. What else have we got? Carl said, call me elitist, but I liked the Sony didn't have native third-party options. The Sigma 20mm f.14 is a killer lens, yes, and it is. I agree with the Oreo. They're beautiful lenses. They're always made stunning. Oreo said I have the Canon E mount. Yeah, and then they're going to be the same lens. They've said it's going to be. Oh, actually, we could find the pricing because they did say this morning, and that's what I noticed. Let me just go back to here for a minute. On Sony Alpha Rumors, they did actually say that the Sigma FE lenses to have the same price as the Canon Nikon version. So there you go. So you could easily find the price of these, and you don't have to buy the MC11 adapter. So you're saving in that respect as well. Let's see what it says too down here, just to see if it says anything else. These lenses are compatible with Sony's continuous AF, which would not have been possible by using the Sigma MC11 adapter. This means you get full Sony autofocus system benefits. There you go. A new special design will probably have raised the cost of the lens, and all those art lenses already have superb image quality. At least on the tele side of the lens size, the special FE design would have been resulted in more or less the same size anyway. So there you go. Let's go back to questions. David said the 135 1.8 balance is much better with a battery grip, and yeah, that's what I was just saying, Dave. If you have the battery grip on, it does balance much better. So you probably are going to need that to have the real feel and balance of these cameras. Mike said, it's OC personal taste, but I always get Samyang over Sigma, and I own 7 Samyang lenses, and I love them. And yep, there's no problem with that at all, Mike. Like I said, it's all just personal taste. And it's what you're used to and what you like working with. There's nothing wrong with Samyang either. It's just what I'd said. If it was me, I would buy Sigma, but I'm not putting Samyang down at all. On the other hand, I also love my Sigma 18 to 35 1.8. That's a fantastic lens. That's used a lot on the GH5s, the 1.8 version of that, and the macro you're using as well, 150 macro. Yep. Okay. If you have IBIS in the dynamic range, do you really need primes? I think he's saying. I feel like with the Sony you don't have compromises using the 2.8 zooms, and it's a personal thing. I like shooting wide open, JP. So for me, it is a personal thing. I love to shoot at 1.8 and 1.4. Nearly all of my work is at that sort of range, and this is why I love the A9 so much. This is why I discussed the other day that I love the A9 being able to shoot at 132 thousandths of a second, because I can put the 35 1.4 on there and shoot at 1.4 in sunlight. That for me is a massive thing, and it is certainly the way that I shoot. I don't like shooting at 2.8 or above, so if I can avoid it, I'll always be shooting at 1.8 or 1.4. If I had a 1.2 lens, I'd be shooting at 1.2. I love to shoot wide open, but that's just my style. So yeah, it just depends how you actually like to shoot. Three Trees said, I demand 4K is a waste of time for me, just like 24 megapixel versus 42. Can't even shoot slow motion in 4K. 4K is important for me because I like to be able to crop in when I'm shooting video. Now, the only reason why I say that's important is because I'm doing fusion and I haven't got multiple people shooting different camera angles and things. I can just shoot 4K and then crop in basically to 100%, and it looks like it's 2 camera angles. So for me, 4K is a very important thing to have. The GH5 particularly is I can shoot 4K 60p, so I can use slow motion as well. So I do love to shoot in 4K. JP, but that's me. There's nothing wrong with 1080p shooting though at all. I usually deliver 1080p, but I'm shooting in 4K. David Johnson said the Sigma 35 is a beautiful lens, yeah, and I'm sure it would be, and that's a lens that certainly excites me more than any other lens at the moment. Now, Brian said, will they perform like Sigma lens with Canon adapter or like the Sigma 16 1.4? Well, I think these probably will perform better than, well, according to the Sony Alpha rumors they're going to be better than using the MC11 adapter, so I think they're going to be a little bit better. They've probably tweaked these to work better than the adapter version, so I think it's just going to be a better improvement. Price I've just mentioned, if you search for the Nikon and Canon price on these lenses, it's the same price. So Canon, Sigma Alpha, Sony Alpha rumors have just said it's the same price, so that'll give you the price on what these actually are. Altrix joiners, hi Altric. What else have we got? JP, why does Sony only give you UHS-2? I don't know. I really don't know. Perhaps to put 2 of the other faster formats on the card will tax the processor. I'm not sure. Perhaps the bus has something to do with it. It doesn't really bother me, to be totally honest. I'm not worried about it at all. Clearly, it'd be better if they had both fast cards, but then there must be a reason why they're only doing that. It can't save them much in cost because talking at that sort of frame of camera, it will be minimal, surely. So I can't answer that, but there must be a reason. Mike said, if you write RAW to the UHS-2 card and JPEG to the other, you don't really need it. And that's what I do, Mike. That is exactly the way that I work, and I haven't noticed any difference at all. I don't see the necessity to write RAW to both cards. The JPEG, to be honest, on most of these cameras is good enough. And remember, my goal is to get the correct exposure in camera. So usually I could use JPEGs, to be honest, and not even go for the RAWs. I always use the RAWs, but I could use the JPEG. So the way that I'm working is to have JPEG RAW on the fast slot and then JPEG on the other slot. And that's the way that I work. Roy said, have you got any thoughts about the Voigtlander 40 E-mount 1.2? No, I haven't. But I've seen a couple of reports and the reviews weren't very good of that lens. So you might need to Google it, Roy, and have a look. I know that I've got the Voigtlander for the GH5. It's the 10.5mm 0.95 lens, and I adore that lens. But that Voigtlander didn't get very good reviews, but Voigtlanders have a certain look about them, and it's not only about that look, it's also about the feel and the operation of them as well. Three Truths said, David, I love that you have not moved to G Master and you are still totally killing it with your work. Says a lot. Thanks so much, Three Trees Photography. Remember, any camera and lens that is released nowadays is more than ample and more than good enough to get any serious work out there, guys. Trust me, you do not need the latest gear to get amazing work. But if you can afford it and you want to go down that line, I say go for it. And like I said, I'll be getting the A7 III sometime this year alone. I just don't need the G Master to be getting heaps of work. And my business is a successful business. My clients love the type of work that I do. I'm always paid. All my shoots, 99% of them are paid shoots, not models that I've tried to get off online. They're always nearly paid shoots. Occasionally I do model shoots where I've asked for models, but very rarely. So most of them are paid. So they must be liking what I produce. So, and like I said, I'm not using G Master lenses, so don't believe you have to get G Master lenses to do good work. You don't. The Sony 1.8 FE lens is amazing. That lens is brilliant. And it's that cheap compared to the Sony G Master 85. Now, the G Master 85, yes, will be better in the fact that it's a little bit more depth of field, and the bokeh is slightly better. But you're still going to get amazing results with the 85 1.8, and I'm telling you, clients will not know the difference. You won't get a client that will say to you, you should have used the Sony 85 G Master 1.4 here, not the Sony 85 1.8. It won't happen. The 85 is fantastic, and like I said, I'd buy that in a heartbeat if my Batis wasn't working. I bought the Batis because at the time Sony didn't have another 85. If I was buying now, I'd get the 85 1.8. What else have we got? Chad said, Merry Christmas, Sony. It is like Christmas. I know, I'm so excited about that camera. I can't wait to get it later in the year. I mean, I really can't wait. Three Trees said, I'll be really happy when you can surf the web and you have YouTube open while on the iPhone. Get your shit together. What? I'm not sure what that means. Casper said 85G Master isn't incredible. It is, and it is a beautiful lens. But I can tell you, Casper, I'm happy with the 85 1.8, and I don't want to carry around that weight. It's also slower focusing, so you know it depends on which way you want to go. The Sony 85 1.8 is much faster in focusing than what the 85G Master is. But if you do want the ultimate in quality for bokeh, and you do want the ultimate quality to get, you know, your depth of field, well, obviously the G Master is the way to go. But you definitely don't have to get that G Master lens. The 85 1.8 is perfect. To be honest, if money was no issue, I'd buy both. I'd get the 85 and also the G Master and the other Sony lens. When I'm traveling or whatever or doing normal shoots, I'll be using the 85 1.8 because I wouldn't want to be lugging around that weight. But that's the way I shot. It's like I said with the Samyang, the weight for me is an issue, but for other people it's not. And Casper, it probably isn't an issue for you. So I can understand what you're saying, that lens is an amazing lens. So are there any more questions, guys? There is a lot of reviews out, obviously, now of the A7 III or starting to come out. They've all been positive. I haven't seen one negative yet about that camera. I'm still trying to work out whether it focuses up to f11 in autofocus like the Sony A9 does. It probably won't, but let me know if anyone has found out that answer down below. Clearly, if you haven't seen, if you're not on the live chat, and leave any questions down below and I will answer them. I always answer questions. Leighton said, any thoughts on the Sony 35 1.8? No, I haven't ever used that lens. That's the APS-C version, isn't it? I think I've got the. If you're talking about the APS-C one, Leighton, I've got two 35s. I've got the full frame versions though. I've got the 2.8, which I love, and I've also got the Sony 35 1.4, which I adore. That's probably my favorite lens. On the APS-C side, I've got the 24 1.8, which I love. That's shooting me now, actually, and that gives me the 35 focal length. If that's the APS-C lens length, it becomes a 50, and I don't use 50mm that much. So yeah, I've not used that lens, so I can't tell you about it. Three True said I was bitching about Apple, not you. You're killing it with your channel. That's okay, mate. Thanks so much for saying that. Reza said, in Jan, Sony talk about the A7S, but now they are releasing the A7 III. NAB, I think April is when they're going to, I think what the A7S will come out then. Not long away. I think NAB sometime in April. JP, it's funny how Canon is afraid to give you an AF joystick on their 6D2. It may be because their touchscreen is so good. I don't know if that... Has the 6D got... the full touchscreen? I think it has. The main difference for me is that I'm going to, like I said, tomorrow I'll discuss the D850 against the A7 III, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to discuss how I think both cameras stack up against one another. But I think Sony have hit the A7 III out of the ballpark, and I'm just dying to see what they release with the A7S 3. Doesn't mean I'm going to get that straight away, no, but it means I can get it later on, and I will probably get it sooner or later, maybe later in the year as well. But Sony are just knocking it out of the ballpark. I think, to be totally honest, I think if you're a Canon and Nikon user, you would have to be a little bit worried about where it's going. You'd have to be seriously thinking about jumping ship, perhaps. If they don't release something very soon in the mirrorless side of things, they're going to be in trouble. And I don't know how they're going to answer this that Sony have just released. I'm not sure how they're going to answer it at all. What else people said? Oreo said, what about the new Tamron 28-75? It's probably going to be a good lens, Oreo. It's not a lens that I personally would buy. But it's basically the same as the Samyang. They're the same company, so it probably will be a really good lens. If you're after a 2.8 lens that's cheaper than the GM versions, it's probably going to be quite a good lens. Everyone expects A7 III last year in October. Yeah, it was behind a little bit, but boy, has it been worth the wait, JP. Why is Sigma saying the MC is not usable in AFC? It works far better in AFC. I'm not sure what they meant by that, because I was sure when I tried it that it worked. So I'm not quite certain what they meant by that. I'm not sure. Altric said, oh, he just said, what's good, Ian Brown? Can't the 2470 or Sigma 24105? Oh, I'd probably get the, I don't know. I'm not sure which ones I'd get out of that. I don't use 2470 much now at all, to be honest. I'd probably find the 24-105 focal length is a better focal length for what I use. If I was going to be using a zoom lens. Yeah, so I'd probably go for the 24-105, but that's just me personal. Jason Lanier said the A7 III has better ISO than the A7 II. According to his video, yes, it did, and that wouldn't surprise me at all. I would expect that now. Just wait for the A7 III though to come out. That is going to hit everything out of the ballpark. I can't believe what that's going to be. If Sony have released this for the A7 III, just wait for the the A7 III. Just wait for the new A7S. That is going to be incredible. April is a good time for the A7 III. Yeah, it'll be early April, I think. Sony 24-105 f4, yes, that's probably, everyone is raving about that lens, and that would be one that I would be interested in, Rad, definitely for travel. The 24-105 would be unbelievable, and everyone that's talking about that lens is saying it's fantastic. Don't be put off by the f4, guys. The f4 really is not an issue now anymore. The depth of field is ample on those lenses. The ISO now, you can push it up so high in these cameras without noise that it really doesn't make any difference anymore. So I wouldn't be afraid of using the f4 version at all. And that's why I'm sticking with f4 myself. I used that 100-400 f4 and I loved it. I thought that was just an amazing lens. So don't be afraid of the f4 versions of these lenses. You don't need the 2.8. I'd prefer to buy something like that 24-105 f4 and then get a really decent prime to go with it. That's the way that I would work. And that works for me now. I've got the 70-200 f4, which I use when I'm in weddings, but most of the time I'm using the Batis 85 and the 35 1.4, but I do occasionally get out the f4 70-200, and I'm happy with that lens. I don't need the 70-200 GM, but that's just me, the way that I shoot. Canon went out answer with rebates in the US. They want to be giving the camera away, JP, because there's no way I'd be buying the Canon now, not after what Sony released yesterday. Altric said, I love my 85 1.8, and I don't blame you, Altric. That is an incredible lens. It's basically the same as the Batis. It's exactly the same as this. And I think from everything I've seen and used, it's the same lens. But the only difference is it doesn't have the weather sealing and it doesn't have the stabilization in the lens. You're paying for that to get the Zeiss version of this lens. And look, it's on the camera. I used this for a shoot that I did the other day. It's just stunning. I mean, it's just a stunning lens. And like the 85 1.8 is going to give you that exact same quality. That's why I would buy the Sony version now if I was buying it and save the money. Because these all have stabilization now in camera, you don't need that. Yes, the weather sealing is probably an advantage, but that's probably the only thing. What else have we got? Iron Brown said he loves that lens too. And like I said, I'd be buying that lens if I didn't have the Batis lens now. That would be my go-to lens. Sam said, let me know when you see your GH5. I'm interested in your 42.5mm, not the body. No worries, Sam. JP said, if I advertise it, I'll probably try and sell the whole lot in one go, I think, first. JP said, all the YouTubers have to say positive remarks or no clicks for viewership. Well, I don't know if that's true. I can tell you if there was an issue with this camera and I thought there was an issue, I would tell you there was an issue. I'm not paid by Sony at all. And a lot of my viewership aren't just Sony viewers. So, I mean, I have a lot of GH5 viewers that follow me and things like that. So I tell you the truth. I'm not paid by anyone at all. I'm not sponsored by anyone. I'm not paid by anyone. So if I thought there was an issue with that camera, I'd tell you that I thought there was an issue with that camera. I know you're saying it's not me, David, but some YouTubers, I agree. Some YouTubers, you have to be careful with what they say. And you do because they're sponsored. And if they're sponsored, you can't take it as gospel as if they're not sponsored. And that's the thing that, is about this. If someone ever asked me to do something sponsored, I would say this is a sponsored chat. I'd still be honest with you guys, though. I can't stand that. I mean, it's just not ethical. Altry said the G Master is very slow. My buddy has it and tried it. It is so slow it slapped my 85 back on my A9, and that's the issue with the G Master. It is definitely slower in the 85. And I can tell you it's substantially slower than the Sony 85 1.8. It definitely is. Sam said, I agree, I sold mine and got the 1.8, and I don't blame you, Sam. But like I said, I'm not bagging the G Master. There's a place for it. It's more a methodical lens. If you're in a studio, in that sort of scenario where focus isn't as critical, I would go the G Master. If I'm shooting a wedding, I wouldn't be putting the G Master at 1.4 on there. I'd be using the 85 1.8 because you could miss focus, and that's the difference between, say, the Sony 1.8 and something like the G Master lens. So you know you have to be careful about that, and that's where I'm honest about you. This is why if I was sponsored by Sony, I'd be saying get the G Master lens. I certainly wouldn't be saying get the Sony 1.8. Thank you so much, Tony. Really appreciate it. I'm sponsored by Tony. Tony is an amazing person. I love it. What else have we got? So that's why I'm saying to you, anyone out there that wants an amazing lens for Sony, get the Sony 1.8 85. That is the best money lens you can buy for Sony. And I can tell you my other favourite lens too is the Sony 35 1.4. I adore that lens. I adore that lens for its the way that it works. It's got the aperture ring on it, which is incredibly important. It's got the D-clicked ring on it. It's stunning. The other lens that I adore is this Sony that I'm using right now, which is a 24 1.8. I adore that on my A6 500. It's one of the best lenses that I've ever had. So you don't need to get G Master lenses, guys. I'm not saying don't buy them if you want them. They're fantastic lenses. What else have we got? All YouTubers have to be overly... Oh, I've read that one, yes. I don't know, Altric, I don't know if the G Master is overrated. It's just got a... Oh, thank you so much, Red. Really appreciate that. I don't think that the G Master lens is overrated at all, but it has its place, like everything else that Sony have. Remember, there's still a place for the A7 III. There's still a place for the A9. So, and just like there's still a place for G Master lenses. For instance, if you were shooting in a dance recital and you're going in and shooting dances in a concert area where it's very dark, you would need the 70-200 G Master. You need that for the 2.8 aperture. If you're shooting in studio, the 1.8 G Master 1.4 would be an advantage where you can work a little bit slower. But if you're doing general photography, portraits outside, you're doing events, things like that, the G Master would not be the way to go, I believe, the 85. You're better off with the Sony 1.8, by far. So I don't think it's overrated. It has its use, like everything else. What else have we got? 135 trumps the 85 for portraits? Yes, it does. I mean, I've just never had the ability to have one. Native, that is. But the 135 is stunning. Altric said, a lot of people say that, but they haven't updated the firmware on their camera, the 85 1.4. I used the latest version in the camera store testing it, and it was still slower. It was still slower, David, than the 85 1.8. What else have we got? Cully Soul said, love your honesty, thanks. Well, it's important to me. I like to be honest with you guys. Sam said, I still think the rendition of the 1.4 is superior, and it is, Sam, and that's, I totally agree with you. The rendition is still superior in that lens, but your clients are not going to notice. This is the thing that I'm saying to people. My clients will not notice if I've shot at 1.4 or 1.8. They're not going to care that I've shot with the 1.8. For me, it's all about working in a comfortable way and a way that I'm happy and not to be able to miss focus. And that, to me, can be an important thing. And that's why I'm saying, for me, the Sony 1.8 would be the way to go, not the baddest 1.4. But that's the way I shoot, Sam. There's nothing wrong with you saying that lens is better. It is better. If you look at the reviews of that lens and the rendition, it is better. I have to agree with you. The G Master is faster after the update. Yes, it's still not as fast as the 1.8 though. Thank you, Tony, so much for that donation. Really appreciate it. Three Tree said, hit the like button, folks. Yes, please, if you can, guys, please. Love you to watch. Hit the like button. Altric said, what's up? Davey said, not much. Just talking to each other. Rad gave a donation. Thank you so much, Rad. I really do appreciate that. I really do. Richard said, I have the 85 1.8 and love it. I do too. It's my favourite lens. But like I said, the Battis and that one are the same rendition, I reckon. KTM said, a good recommendation for wide-angle shooting on a Sony FE SE body. I have the 85 1.8 and need something in the range of the 15 to 24. Well, I use the 16 to 35, and I love that lens. That's the F4 version. That's the lens that I'm using. But now that Sigma have come out, perhaps you can use. Do you want to? If it's a zoom lens, I'd probably get the 16 to 35 still. I love that lens and I use it all the time. That's one of my go-to lenses in weddings when I want to go to wide. APS-C, I have the 10 to 18 and I love that lens as well, and I even use that on full frame too. I use that on full frame because I can get from 12 to 16 millimeter on full frame with that lens, and that's one of the things that people don't realize, that lens, even though it's APS-C, you can use it at 12 to 16 without any vignetting around the corners. If you're dealing with wide angle on its own, well then you may look at one of these Samsung Sigma, which is the 14 or 24 or the 28. Could be lenses. Emperor said, sorry, but the short version, what did I miss? You'll have to watch it if you haven't watched it so far. I'm not going to stay much longer, guys, because it gets too long, but I will answer a few more of these questions. I always like to make sure I answer them for you. Canon might as well start offering trade-ins and use the sensor from the old camera. I know, I'd be really worried if I was shooting Canons. Honestly, I got rid of my Nikon and I got really good money for getting rid of them, and I'm glad I did. If I was shooting Nikon and Canon now, I'd definitely be thinking about it. Don't hate me, guys, for saying that if you're a Canon or Nikon shooter, but I would be. David Johnson said, oh, hang on. Casper said, you need G-Master lenses, David. Try for a month. I'm not interested, Casper. Seriously, I just don't want that weight, and I don't need it. My clients are so happy with what I produce. I don't need it. I'm booked out for 2019 in weddings now for a lot of the months, and a lot of model shoots are already booked out for this year. I don't need to change the way I shoot. So honestly, I don't need to shoot G-Master. I'm quite happy shooting what I'm shooting. David Johnson said, I used the 85 1.4 for my event a few weeks ago and didn't have any issues with focusing speed. And this was in a dark and lit room with the A7 III. Thanks for that, David. That's interesting. JP, don't worry about Canon. They still make the best home use of all-in-one printer. You guys, honestly. What else have we got? JP, I'll let David borrow my G-Master Trinity if I can couch surf. Three Cheese Photography said the 80 G-Master is slower and it hunts horribly compared to the 85 1.8. It does hunt, but perhaps with the new update, I still found that when I tested it in the store, it was still slower. I didn't notice it hunting as much, but it was definitely slower focusing. Definitely slower focusing. Rad said, I actually have the GM zooms, the 16 to 35, 2470 and the 70 to 200. I got used to the weight. Anything lighter I get in the future, such as primes, will be a delight to use. It's good exercise with the GMs. Yeah, and like I said, Rad, if you're not worried about weight, I can totally understand you using GMs. And like I said, when I was shooting Nikon, I had all of their high-end glass, all of the 2.8 versions, which is similar to the GM versions, and I managed okay. But I did, honestly, I loved getting rid of those lenses and shooting the lighter stuff. But that's just the way that I shoot. It doesn't mean that those lenses are bad. They're not at all. I mean, they're future-proof. Casper said David does not like the G-Master lenses. It's not that I don't like them, Casper. I do like them. I just don't want to carry that weight around. Hi, Gerald. How are you? Good to see you in here. Good exercise. Yeah, it is. It probably, I could build up some cans if I wanted to lug those around a little bit. What else have we got? Gerald, yes, ordered it already. Is that the A7 III, Gerald? You booked for 2 nights. Yes, I am. My weddings are nuts. I do incredibly well with weddings, particularly. Any thoughts on the Sony FE 70 to 300? No, because I haven't used it, to be honest. I didn't even realise there was a 70 to 300. You're talking about the 100 to 300. I love that lens. I used it in a review. If you go back, you'll see that I used that in a review and I adored it. It was fantastic. One of the best lenses I've used. Focusing was incredible. on that lens. Leighton said 24-70-300 or with 70-200 f4 or 24-70 f4 with the 85 1.8. I'd get the I'd get the 85, but that's me because I use the 85 so much. I'd get the 24-70 f4 and the 85 1.8. But I don't think I'd buy the 24-70 f4 anymore. I'd be buying that 24-105 lens, the f4 version, if I was buying that now. I've got it, and I use it in studio. That's really the only time that I'm using the 24-70 f4 now, but I use the 85 1.8 all the time. To be totally honest about the situation, I'd get the 35 1.4 and the 85 1.8 as the two lenses if I could only have two lenses. They're the two that I use 90% of the time, the 85 Batis and the Sony 35 1.4. The money needed to buy GM means money saved on gym membership. Gerald ordered the A7 III. Congratulations, Gerald. You're going to love it. You're going to love it, and I'm jealous. It's going to kill me when you guys get it, and I've got to wait sometime till later in this year. JP, Canon will soon become like an Apple commercial where the child in the future asks, what's Canon? They've got to do something to answer this. If you don't need the reach of the 70-200, stick with the 85. Yeah, I love the 85. But having said that, I do take my 70-200 f4 to weddings, and I do bring it out when I want the compression. So I do still use them, but not that often. There's two lenses that I'd like to probably buy. That 24-105 or the 25, I can never remember all the numbers. F4 version, the new one that Sony's brought out, really interests me. And the 100-400 G Master also really interests me as well. What's it saying here? If you don't need the reach of the 70, said, what lens do you recommend for newborn baby photography? 35. I always use for newborns, but I don't do them anymore. I've now stopped doing newborns because I hated doing it. I just don't do newborn anymore at all, but that's the lens that I use nearly all the time. I use my Sony 35 1.4. You could use the Samyang 35 1.4 as well if you haven't got the money for the Sony, but 35 1.4 is really good. It gets you nice and close as well, but that's the lens that you're using on. I'd be using for newborn. Casper said, I stopped going to gym and he's just using the 100-400 G Master, 100 reps a day. David said the 70-300 is solid. Yeah, I've never used it, so I can't give an example about that. Rad said the 70-300 is great, but it does not have a ring for adapting to tripods. Oh, okay, well, that's interesting. It is comparable to the 70-200 f4 in quality. And people talk about that. I'm wrapped with the 70-200 f4 in quality. My lens is as sharp as. So I'm really happy with that. I've never had someone say it's not sharp. So, you know, you don't have to get the G Master if you want a sharp 70-200. If you can't afford it, get the 70-200 f4. There's nothing wrong with that lens. JP said, since newborns move around, get primes. Yeah, I never used to use zoom lens with newborns at all. Sam said, Canon also makes some great premium paper. Oh, you guys. Oh, no. Three Trees said, get the Sigma 35, yeah, 1.4, and that's what I was saying. The 35 1.4 Sigma or Sony version, yep. Gerald said, I love my Sony 24-105 f4. It's meant to be a fantastic lens. Yeah, I'd love to try that one, actually. Gerald said he also loves the 24-105. Great travel lens as well. Guys, please don't sink Canon's reputation until I have sold all my remaining stuff. Get rid of it now, Oreo. Put it on eBay immediately. JL Studio said, what's wrong with the 105? Well, there's nothing wrong with the 105. The 105 is a nice focal length, but it's too close to the 85 for my liking. So if I had the perfect scenario for me, to be totally honest, and I may go down this way one day, the perfect sort of range for me would be the 35 1.4 Sony lens, the 85 1.8, and then the 135 1.8, whatever that is. Now that could be the Sigma that's just released, or I'm hoping Sony release one. That would be the perfect combo for me. That would be just perfect. The 105 is a great lens, but it's too close to the 85 for my liking. I don't need that lens. So that's just to answer that question, J. Lou. We've had another Canon thing there. Gerald, don't shoot me. I have both the G Master 85 and the 1.4 and the G Master 70-200 2.8, which, yes, David, is heavy. I don't blame you. Look, if you can handle the weight, Gerald, fantastic quality. It's just not what I want to do. It's just not the weight that I want to do. And like I said, trust me, I could afford that with the business I'm running, but I don't want to be running that sort of lenses anymore. I got rid of that when I sold my Nikon stuff. That was a deliberate reason I wanted to change over to Sony. JP Gerald Williams said, do you do landscapes and portraits? I can't justify the 85 cents. I'm not a big portrait shooter. Yeah, if you don't do portraits, I wouldn't go 85. I'd get something more with that wider angle aspect. But I shoot a lot of portraits, and to be honest, sometimes I love using my 70-200 f4, and I like shooting at 200 for portraits, for landscape, because I love to bring that compression in. Sometimes I think everyone shoots wide, and that can be a real issue if you shoot too wide too often. So having that zoom lens, a 70-200 for landscapes, is a really good thing. So yeah, you may want to consider a longer lens as well if you're thinking about that. I am getting too old for the G Master, Casper. I am. After a wedding, I used to, honestly, my back used to kill me. So working around for 12 hours with the heavier lenses on my back nearly destroyed me, and now I don't ever get back pain now with the lenses I'm carrying. When I recently did the Profoto A1 and I had the Canon camera, I had the 5D Mark IV with the 70-200 2.8 Canon lens on there. It nearly killed me using that camera again, and I hated using it for the weight. So for me, weight is an issue, but for others, it's not. So for me, personally, I'm not interested in buying a G Master lens for that. What else have we got? JP said, yes, I do landscapes and portraits. Yeah, if you do both, it's a hard decision. You have to work out which way you're always shooting or what you're shooting most of the time. David needs to keep in shape and alive. I look forward to these talks. Thanks, JP. Casper said, have a good day. Richard said, Canon ran out of gunpowder. I don't know what they're going to do, Canon. I think this is probably going to affect Canon more than it's going to affect Nikon, actually. JP, I'll fund the cost of the Sherpa to carry the G Masters. I love you guys, seriously. I will definitely take a look at the 135, and that's the thing that interests me as well. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to head off, and I'll see you again too for another video, because I'm going to talk about the comparison between the Nikon D850 and the new Sony A7 III, because I want to go through the specs on that and talk about that. So I'll see you all for the next video. Please give me a thumbs up if you haven't liked the video. Please like it. I'd really appreciate that if you have done that. Don't forget to subscribe to my Facebook channel. I'll put that in the description down below. Any questions, leave them down below and I will get back to you as well. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I'm just reading a couple of last questions. The Nikon 105 is beautiful, and it is. I've used that lens, Leighton, and it's a stunning lens. It is a stunning lens, but it's just too close to 85 for my usage. That's why I'm saying I'd prefer a 135 over the 105, but that's just my personal speaking. Right, said, speaking of the Profoto A1, has there been any news on the Sony version release yet? No, I haven't heard any more about that yet. It'll come. I heard just sometime in the new year. And Bruce said, thanks everyone, good night. Sam said, today I spoke to the Nikon rep at DigiDirect in Melbourne. Felt sorry for him actually. He was standing there all alone with the D850. Yeah, I wouldn't be buying any other camera than that Sony A7 III if I was getting into it now. I can tell you that now. Gerald said, thanks a lot. All right, guys, so I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers for now, and I'll catch you all again for the next video. Bye for now.